these onions in this room? And here we are, guys. As Doctor Strange said in Infinity War, we're in the Endgame now, baby. Well, I think I'm kind of paraphrasing a little bit, but Endgame. Avengers Endgame, nonetheless. Done by the Russo brothers, and it has a fuck ton of people in this movie. This movie had a lot to live up to. And it's not just because Infinity War was obviously really well received. It's because they had to try and tie everything up and make it feel like it both was not a perfect ending per se, but also it had a finality to it. I mean, you're talking about 11 years building up to this. I mean, I was talking to my brother about it last night and about how it was so strange thinking about how back in 2008, you know, I was just becoming a man. I was graduating from high school when Iron Man landed in theaters. Same year The Dark Knight did. And Iron Man changed the way we could sit there and perceive not just comic book movies, but, you know, having these massive giant universes within. And it's to the point now where other movie companies and other brands are trying to copy this style. Look at DCEU for an example. They tried to copy and catch up to Marvel so quickly that they fell flat on their face and had to reconsider and have gone back to focusing more on the individual stories than trying to do these big over-the-top Justice League movies. And there's a lot of other different ideals and whatnot. I mean, honestly, really X-Men was the first original. But Fox and Friends just didn't do it nearly as well as Marvel and Disney did. Yeah, sure, there might have been one or two duds here and there, or movies that just didn't land as well as the others, but for the most part, most of these movies are iconic. Pushing storytelling and action within comic book style movies, and obviously giving us ridiculous budgets that gave us ridiculous numbers in box offices around the world. So Endgame, of course, had a ton to live up to. And I'm not going to spoil anything here. I might do a spoiler video later on and talk about the things that I really loved and I liked. Maybe things that I felt could have been done a little bit better. And yeah, let's fucking talk about it. So I really can't talk much about it because, to be honest with you, the first third of the movie, for the most part, really is all that was shown in the trailers. There's a couple of glimpses from the third and the second acts that are kind of intermingled in there a little bit. But really, most of the shots, most of the stuff, and most of the plot points that are brought up are really only in the first third of the movie. A lot of the movie's hidden away, and I don't want to give away any of that. Because it was refreshing to be able to go into the theater and be blown away, because there's just so much stuff that they really trick people with. I mean, if you thought people were really surprised to see that the Hulk wasn't a big part of Infinity War, hold your fucking horses for this movie. Honestly, Endgame just really delivered on a lot of different places for me. Whether it was emotionally, you know, whether it was just really enjoying all the action, there was so much humor in this movie. As grim and as dark as this movie is. Because really, that's what this movie focuses on. I mean, there's a lot of things that it focuses on. It does a really great job, too, of like hitting all these different little things and these little points. But the biggest one is obviously dealing with loss. Dealing with failure. The Avengers have always had, you know, losses from time to time and able to regroup and get back at it. But not to this level, not to this scale. And it's really a movie about trying to learn on how to move on. Obviously, the Avengers can't do it. Tony said it in the original Avengers. You know, we might not always win, we might not always succeed, but we'll always avenge. And that's really what this movie is focused on. And it's really interesting. And like I said, I'm not going to give it away, but it's really interesting that by the end of the movie, you see where some characters were able to carve out a second life, and they're throwing everything on the line to help bring back the other people that were lost. Anyways, even though they found their happy ending. And there's some people who just couldn't move on. It wasn't even just that. It was other stuff previously in their life, as well as this added failure that just made it where it all came collapsing around them and they just couldn't move forward. And there are some people in this movie that are gonna die, and there are some people that don't die. And I'm not gonna spoil who, but I'm not gonna lie. With each loss, with each, you know, death, you're gonna feel it. You're gonna feel it deep in your soul. There are going to be a lot of tears. This movie, and I mean, maybe that's the reason why they really tried hard with the humor. I mean, obviously Marvel's always been kind of a more lighthearted, funny movie, you know, going experience no matter really which one you're going to, except for maybe a couple here and there, but for the most part, jokes are usually abound. And here, it really helps offset, because the first 20 minutes is just dealing with loss, and have really sad speeches. I mean, the speech that you've seen probably in the trailers with Tony in the ship by himself, well, not completely by himself, he's obviously with Gamora's sister, but that whole, like, moment in the trailer is just like a part of his speech, and his whole speech is really sad, and it really hits home. But really, that's just one of many moments in this film that just hit you, and they hit you hard. They did a really good job. Whether it's the acting, the writing, most of the script is fantastic. There is one thing in the movie that if you really pay attention, it's going to leave you going, wait a second, that's not quite right. We established it differently. And it's interesting because how they established it here in the movie is more like the comics, but how it was established previously wasn't. And other people had pointed that before, and I don't know if that's because they kind of left it vague in a way. I mean, they kind of explained it, but at the same time also explained that they didn't completely understand it. So maybe there is a reason for them thinking they can kind of get around it, but it does seem kind of like a plot hole in a way. We'll see if they ever actually wind up filling that hole, giggity, and we'll see if they actually ever wind up kind of explaining a little bit more further on, or if there's a director's cut of some sort, whether it's like 3.5 hours long, whatever, that kind of explains it a little bit more. And like I said, if you see the movie, you go see the movie, or you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It did stand out to me, and I was kind of like, wait a second, that's not quite right. But if you can get past that one little thing, everything else is fine. The movie's great, it flows amazingly, and I don't know if there's really anything in this movie that I would have cut out. The first third of the movie, you know, hell, I'd even say half of the movie is really slow. But that's not a bad thing. I mean, when people say slow burn movies, they automatically think, oh, that's a negative. And to me, that's not. It's a character-driven movie. It's dealing with a lot of characterization, a lot of character building. And while some of these characters don't desperately need it, obviously, they've been building these characters up for over a decade. It's dealing with things that these characters are not familiar with. And some of them they're too familiar with it, and that's the problem. So for me, I was never bored, and the 3-hour movie didn't feel like 3 hours until my bladder started to say, hey, I gotta pee. That was about the moment when I was like, oh yeah, we're pushing that 3-hour mark now, aren't we? Other things I could touch on, honestly, the cinematography in this movie is phenomenal. Between the cinematography and the fan service, those are 2 reasons alone to go see this movie. There is a ton of fan service. And honestly, while fan service has gotten a negative connotation over the last several years or so, I feel like there's a difference between just straight up ripping off previous material or really running off of previous material and having fan service. And it's a fine line in between the two. And here I feel like the fan service is done really well. There's a lot of callbacks. There's throwbacks to other movies. There's even scenes straight from other movies. You're like, did they reshoot this, or is this brand new? And the thing is unless somebody talks about it, we'll never know. But it's integrated so well here, and there's just so many great moments that just make you go, oh, I remember that. Oh, yeah, that. You know, 8 years ago, 7 years ago, 6 years ago. And it just hits all the right sweet spots. And like I said before, I mean, it's not just dealing with loss. Every character has a really deep, sad moment that just wells you up, because you remember certain moments in, you know, throughout their, you know, movie life and existence. And honestly, there are some moments between Thor and a particular character, and there are some moments between Iron Man and a particular character that just, man, they hit you hard. They hit you really hard. And like I said, between laughing and having a good time with all the action, you're going to be crying, or you're definitely going to be tearing up. I know I was tearing up. There was one moment in that movie that I actually did legitimately have tear running down my face. And that's saying something. Not many movies can go ahead and get that kind of emotion out of me. And it was well deserved. I didn't feel like it cheated in any way, shape, or form. It was really good. And one last thing that I'll actually kind of touch on is that last battle. The last battle is gotta be one of the best comic book movie battles of all time. I don't know how they'll ever top that. I'm almost scared to see how they would top that. But honestly, that moment was so good. And was so... It was everything that most comic book fans have been waiting for fucking ever. Since Avengers was first talked about years and years and years ago. Honestly, if anything too, if the cinematography doesn't get you, and there are some straight up just beautiful scenes, the scenes and the script and the writing and the character development doesn't get you, it's that last battle that should sit your ass in the seat and just wait for that. Hell, if that's all you're there for, I mean, obviously go wander around for a bit, but the last 20 to 30 minutes of the film for that last battle, holy crap. That was really good, that was really satisfying, and there were some really great moments in that too. So that's all I'm going to sit there and talk about for now. Like I said, if I do a spoiler film, it'll probably be twice as long as this one. And I'll go over all of the different points and the things that I felt throughout the movie and really try to break down the movie and what I liked, what I loved. Like I said, maybe one or two things that I changed a little bit. And that's not even a knock, that's not even a negative, to be honest with you. It's just things that I think that maybe they could have gone smoother, but I still wouldn't remove them from the movie, if that makes any sense. So that's all for now, guys. My final rating for Endgame is a 10 out of 10. I mean, honestly, and some people might sit there and say, well, you're just fanboying out. In a way, yeah, I kind of am, but to me, Infinity War and Endgame are not two separate movies. They are delivered to us as two separate movies, but just like the original It, you know, back in the, what was it, 80s and 90s or whatever, and when it was a TV series or a TV show, whatever, made for TV thing, whatever, and it was in two parts, really, it's one part. And, you know, this is just done way fucking better. So for me, this isn't just two this is a 5.5 hour movie. They just legally couldn't keep us there for 5.5 hours, so they just made it to two movies. So, yeah, to me, Infinity War was 10 out of 10, and while it was paced differently, and it was handled differently, honestly, the whole vibe of the movie is different. And the whole scenario is a bit different. So it's not like you can completely compare that entirely. What happens in that first half is one thing, and what happens in that second half is another, but they still come together as one big fucking thing that I think most of us are still surprised they were able to pull this off. And I really felt they stuck the landing, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the future holds. Because we know, we always knew, and we definitely know now that the Avengers movies going forward are going to look differently. And I'm hoping that they can continue to sit there and surprise us and really push the boundaries and really just try new things and see what sticks to the wall. You know, they know it works now, let's see what else can work. What else you guys could put together. And honestly, I was talking to my brother about that last night too. I'd love to see the Russo brothers do something different moving forward. I mean, I understand they might want to take a break from Marvel stuff for a while. Maybe never come back to it again. I completely get that too. But it would be great because, especially with the last two Captain America movies and obviously with Infinity War and Endgame, those guys are fucking good. And they got better with each movie, in my eyes. And I'd love to sit there and see them do more work. I can't wait to see what they work on next. Until then, I'll see you guys next time, on the shelf. Bye, guys.